Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Scrogg, and I'm the president of HTG Peer Groups, and I'm pleased today to welcome you to the Q4 Spouse Track. We're joined not only by the audience we have here at the Wyndham Hotel in Orlando, Florida, but through our webcast audience, which we are very pleased to be able to extend the reach of this event around the world. My job today is to kick this off and then get out of the way so a series of great speakers can come up and visit with you about some of the challenges and opportunities around being a spouse in connection to the HTG Peer Group program. Now, just by a quick show of hands, how many people were able to come to the Spouse Track meeting in Dallas when we kicked this off for the first time? All right at half the group. And I know that it's even changed this time because we have several attendees as well from out of the country. We're joined by two guests from...
Three,
I'm sorry, who did I miss? I'm sorry, so we've got Perth, and Melbourne. All right, so we've got almost 25% of the attendees in here from Australia. That is outstanding, and we know we have some more watching as well. So what I want to do is just talk a little bit about the agenda that we are going to cover. I'm going to hand things off to Arlen. He's going to talk to you about the HTG floor plans. And planning is important, whether it's in the family, whether it's in the organization, whether it's in the business, whether it's in the HTG groups. We have groups that have very strong plans about where they want to go, what they want to learn collectively, and you know that makes a difference. We're then going to have Maritza come in and talk to us about how vendors fit into the program. And that's a key part of HTG, both in terms of how businesses grow and the strategic partnerships they have, how they can accomplish more with less in many cases, how they can create win-win relationships, and also from HTG's perspective, how we acquire almost 2/3 of our funding to make this event happen. Rich Anderson's going to come in and work through a group activity that I know we'll all enjoy. We'll take lunch, have a panel around that, look at coaching and communicating effectively with your spouse. Now, coaching your spouse, is that a foreign concept or is that something we do all the time? Maybe we feel like we're being coached, but when we talk to other people, maybe it's just good advice. But we're going to have that conversation, and I think it will be enjoyable. Email, managing the monster. Pete's going to come in and talk a little bit about email. You know, some of you may deal with a lot of email. Some of you may deal with it at work, at home. You know, there's certainly the texting and the calling and the growth of technology, and you're, you know, like it or not, tied to people that work in an industry where they're expected to be at the top of their game, available all the time. I'm sure you've had many conversations about you know, the use of technology in the home, out at dinner, whatever the case could be. But we know that things eventually get to situations where things do get tough. And how do we work through those? The crucial conversations, the plans, the challenges, whether it's in the business or whether it's in the home. And then we'll wrap up with a wine and cheese break, which I do know from some pre-event surveys is Arlen's #1 event that he's looking forward to of this entire week. So please move to the side when that event comes, as that's where Arlen will be headed. So what I chose to talk just a little bit about is I know maybe half of the people in the room. My spouse works during the day and plenty during the night as well, but she was not able to come this week, so I brought her with me in the sense of she very well may be watching right now, but she also has availability to the content for 90 days after the event. So I'll expect this to be fully viewed, and we can talk and coach around the content as well. But that's Tara, my wife, and our puppy named Mojo. And I shared a lot more of this story next door to the leadership forum, and I'm not out to embarrass anybody because that's not my style most of the time. But I will add that we have done a lot of coaching. Now, there's a difference between coaching and training. People will say, oh, I've got my spouse trained to do this, and maybe I coach them to do that. But in our home, we've tried to do a good job of coaching our dog to make smart decisions in the schools they support and the behaviors that they have. And our dog is a Kansas State University fan. Arlen, where'd you go to school?
Iowa State.
Iowa State. So there's clearly some rivalry there, all in good-natured fun. But just like I see people posting on Facebook, it was interesting as people started to come in on Sunday. I've been down here since Thursday, but people coming in, and one of the first things they post a lot of times is, great place to meet, but I'm already missing my kids or my spouse or whatever it may be. So I know I miss that as well. So I want to spend just a minute on the sponsor aspect of this. I alluded to it just a little bit before, and Maritza will come in with her angle. I'm sure Arlen can shed some light on that as well. But as I mentioned, sponsors matter because they help fuel and support the growth. HTG is about helping companies and individuals grow. And it's just like if you have the ability to partner with a sponsor, and your sponsor and vendor used interchangeably in many cases, the difference being sponsors are ones that are paying to have access to the HTG members and take part in many of the activities. But when you can bolt on or align with and all head in the same direction with the sponsor, with a vendor, you have the opportunity to grow in ways you wouldn't otherwise. They have resources and knowledge and people that our members simply don't have. The maturity and accountability that's part of being an HTG is important as well. Because from that standpoint, and many times you may be doing joint planning. The sponsor or vendor may say, I'll give you X. It might be funding to do an event. It might be funding to help call prospects to see if they'd like to do business with you. And there's a give and a get to that, just like a kind of an implied contract, right? I'll fund this if you do this and can deliver it. If you don't, then don't come back to me next quarter because I need to go on and work with somebody else to achieve that. You know, the unique expertise and solutions, there's too much out there in this space to know everything. You hear about cloud computing, about mobility, and it's just too much of a load for each person in an organization or even organizations collectively to know that. So they can partner with the vendors or our sponsors in a way that they can bring resources to the table, help them make the right choices, help them put the pieces of the puzzle together, because in many cases they are placing bets, especially in new technology areas. You know, do I bet red or do I bet black? Do I bet on vendor A or do I bet on vendor B? And that decision will have an impact down the road that can impact your business. I mentioned the funding for HTG from the perspective, again, that we receive nearly 2/3 of our funding. So to be a part of HTG, members pay $2,500 to $3,000 a year for the base program, depending upon when they choose to pay. That would have to be tripled if we said we no longer want sponsors or vendors to be part of our program. And we would not only lose the money, but we would lose those benefits that you see mentioned before. So we talk about the HTG sponsor program, and I don't expect you to see the logos, but those are the sponsors that are helping us foot the bill. And I'd point out that you see kind of different bands there. The top band are our platinum, our gold, our silver, our strategic partners, and then people that are sponsoring this individual event. So when you are in the hallway, if you're in the vendor fair tomorrow night, if you're sitting in a meeting, if you see one of our sponsors, you can visit with them. We'd ask that you thank them for their support because it makes certainly facilities like this. We wouldn't be meeting in Orlando, Florida without their help. And you can ask them about their relationship with HTG, how they found it. And I think the majority of them certainly will view that as a very positive question and will give you a positive response back. So I'm going to wrap up here with a little discussion on the inbox conversation because I think we can all relate to getting email. And Pete will talk more about this, but it's a happy day for me today. It's a happy day because if I go to my inbox and it says there are no items to show in this view, and I haven't cheated and just clicked all of them and brought 300 email messages over into another folder, that the reality is I'm caught up. But that's really not enough because we know there's a lot going on in the background. And one of the pieces of advice I give people is, if you're using Outlook and the emails you have in Outlook like your daily to-do list, then you've lost the battle before you start it. Because that's the easiest thing to do, is just what's the most recent email that came in, I need to address it. And I'm going to just start working down this list, and somehow that defines productivity. And Pete will talk to you about some different perspective on that. The other thing, not only what's in your inbox, but what are you sending out, right? There's two parts to this equation. There's what you get and what you send out, and then the impact it has on somebody else. We talk about go-givers. Well, you can be a go-giver, but you can send emails to people that cause conflict, that take a lot of their time, that are confusing, that take a lot of your time to compose. And the reminder that I was going to give you here, and I think there may be a pointer right here, right under inbox, typically there's sent items. And if you click on sent items like this and go to the bottom left-hand corner, you will see how many messages have been sent out. Now, I'm not saying that this is a measure of anything fantastic, but if you do some easy math and look at the time period that these messages were sent over the number of messages that were sent, I think it's interesting to look at. I did this when I crossed 50,000 messages and realized that I was sending, on average, 1 email an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
And that was just to me.
That's probably right. That's probably right. And I thought about that, and I don't view this is not a, it's like, these are not frequent flyer miles, right? You don't get to say, I'm at 50, I get a free ticket to Australia. You're in a situation here where this becomes your life, can become your life. I couldn't say that I did anything, I spent more time on any one type of task in 2012 than sending email. And is that really a, is that really a goal? It's the tool that gets me hopefully to the goal that I want to achieve, but I just share with you that if you go back and do that simple task, you may be in a situation where you don't even send 1 a day. Maybe you're sending 20 a day. Maybe you're really into Facebook. Maybe you're really into texting. Maybe you like to pick up the phone, which is a piece of advice that I give people more and more and more. These long email battles back and forth, just pick up the phone and let's get to the bottom of this and have a win-win for everybody. So with that, Arlen, I'm going to turn things over to you. Again, thanking everybody for being here. Appreciate the travel, the time. Appreciate you as a spouse. Appreciate your spouse being in HTG. And Arlen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Scott. So thanks for coming to Orlando. I know it's torturous, but somebody has to do it. And Scott is, what he didn't talk to you about on this side of the wall is that he was the mascot at K-State when he was in college. So we tried to get him to do some of his old routines over there. He didn't do it. But he did confess that the 2 years he was mascotting, they won 0 football games. And I mentioned to Dr. Larry that that's kind of how it feels at Auburn this year, right? Almost. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about is something that's really core to HTG. And you may have had your spouse say some things about our 4 plans that, they're a lot of work and they come every quarter and, oh my goodness, we got to get these done. And they're right, they got to get them done. It's one of the requirements to be in HTG to do these 4 plans. But I hope as we go through these, you'll understand why they're important, and most importantly, that you'll become part of the process. I hope you have been. They've been coached on that. I don't know how they're executing, so it'll be fun to hear how they're executing. But the idea is that these plans become the foundation that we use in HTG to drive execution and accountability to. So the idea is that as they create their plans and share them with their groups, then the group knows what these guys are signing up for, and goals need to align with those plans, and then the group can hold them accountable to get these things done. So to really get the most out of HTG, you get your stuff you want on the plan, the new kitchen thing, whatever, put it on the plan. And then the group can take the responsibility of nagging them to get it done. So we're going to talk a little bit about planning, why it matters, how important it is. I'm going to walk you through the different plans we do, the process we go through, and really just try to encourage you to be part of the process as we go through this. We always say that failing to plan is planning to fail, and I shared some research last hour on the other side about companies that use plans. Statistically, last year, eMyth measured a 50% difference in profitability from a company that had a written plan to one that didn't. That's a significant difference. Planning really does matter. And To take it one step further, the research showed that companies that had a plan and were allowed other people to hold them accountable had a 60% increase in profitability compared to companies that didn't. So whatever your husband is telling you they make running their company today, just take it times 1.6, and if you get them to do these plans, you got some money you can spend on your house. There's a lot of parts to planning, okay? And we use a model that's got a number of steps. We're going to talk about a lot of these as we go through the day today. But there are parts of a plan that really never change. Our core values, the mission that we're on, hardly ever change. There are other things that we update on a somewhat regular basis, what our vision is, and how we're going to get some things done, what our dream is we're shooting toward. And then there are things that change all the time, every quarter. And so these plans never get done, okay? Planning is a process. It's an ongoing process. One of the things that people get stuck in sometimes is, well, I wrote the plan and things have changed. That's going to happen, and that's okay. Life happens. Things move. You just have to change the plan. Plans are not set in stone. We're not writing them on a tablet of stone that we can't change. We're writing them as we know today, and when things change, we'll make changes to them. So why do we want to plan? It's bringing the future into the present so we can do something about it now. So we're thinking about where we want to go, but we're bringing it to the present so we can make changes today. I love the bottom quote. The man who plans knows where he's going, knows what progress he is making, and has a pretty good idea when he's going to arrive. If we plan well, it can truly change the outcome. And so we're very focused on that in HTG because this is one of the key success factors that we see in companies. And so we spend a lot of time talking about plans, and we'll walk through the framework of that. We believe planning starts with your legacy, okay? Legacy is about what's going to happen after. And there's two parts to it. There is a personal legacy, and there's a business legacy, okay? So we talk about the outcome of our lives and what we hope will continue as a result of our lives. We also talk about what's the outcome of our business going to be like over time. And the reality is there's going to be a legacy. We'll leave one whether we're trying to or not. There is going to be some outcome. The reality is that we can choose what that looks like. We can help determine what that will be. We can have some control over that if we plan. If we don't, the government will decide, our executors will decide, other people than us are going to make that decision for us. There will be a legacy. So we want to build a foundation where we're intentional about what that looks like. On top of that, we have two pillars. The life plan, which is what we're going to do with all the time we don't spend in our business, which should be the majority, okay? So hopefully it's not less than half. There should be a bucket of time there that we have that we can manage. And then we have our leadership, which is how we're going to do our business life. And so we plan those two things, and that controls our 168 hours every week. And then on top of that, once we know how we're going to live and how we're going to lead, we can figure out how we're going to run a business. So that's what our model looks like. There are actually 5 plans we ask people to write as part of their HTG membership. We focus on one every quarter. Q1, we focus on the business plan. Q2, the leadership plan. Q3, the life plan. Q4, the legacy plan. Both plans. And so as part of their meetings, they are typically going to be highlighting changes in their plan from the last time they talked about it last year and updating the group on what's going on. And so it's a cycle. It never ends. And every quarter, we're talking about another plan. So when we talk about the foundation to planning, it's really about these 4 things, which are key to a business plan. And it all starts with a BHAG. Anybody know what BHAG means? In the back. Yell it out. Not you. Thanks, Aaron. Big, hairy, audacious goal, okay? A guy by the name of Jim Collins coined that term in one of his books, Good to Great. It really is about having that dream. A lot of people call it the castle on the hill. What is it we're trying to achieve? What do we want to do through our company? You might have a BHAG for your life too, but you need to know where you're trying to get to so that you can help people that are part of your organization follow you there. One of the things I hear a lot when I consult is employees don't really know what's going on. What are we trying to accomplish as a company? Because owners haven't taken the time to talk through this with them. So they come to work every day and they're not sure what it is they're really trying to accomplish. The BHAG kind of sets that direction. It helps everybody get pointed in a common area. And so BHAGs are designed to be something that's 15, 20 years down the road. May seem kind of unachievable today, but it's something that we work toward. Might be a nice new house, might be a vacation home somewhere, might be all kinds of stuff. But this is an area that, you know, as a spouse, you should be part of the discussion because this is going to impact you for a long time. So if you haven't been involved in that, I'd encourage you to ask the question, do we have a BHAG? And where do I fit in the picture? Core values, core values are really kind of like the fence. So those are the things that kind of tell us what's okay. And with a company, we want to define to our employees what's acceptable in terms of behavior and the way that they're going to do their job. The way I always talk to my team is, as long as you stay within the core values of our organization, you've got a lot of freedom. I'm not going to slap your hand. I might not agree with your decision, but I'm not going to slap your hand in what you chose to do if you stay inside the core values. If you step over the line, then we're going to have a talk because that's not acceptable. So core values really provide the fence. The mission really is about why we exist. And that helps us understand what our purpose is. As we move to a new generation in the workforce, folks in their 20s and younger, they have a very different perspective on why they go to work. And it's not to get a paycheck. They want to know that their time is making a difference. And when I go and consult for companies and have the conversation, I can talk to the folks in their 50s and 60s, and they get up every day and they go to work and they work hard and they do their job because that's what you do. And I talk to the 20-somethings, and they get up in the morning and say, is what I do today really going to make a difference? Do I know why I'm doing what I do? And if I don't, I'm going to look for a different job. They have a very different take. And so this whole mission thing becomes really, really important to the new generation. And the vision is really all about the blueprint for what we're trying to build. It gives us the overview of what we're trying to accomplish. So, what is your castle on the hill? What is it you want to build? Figure that out with your spouse. Don't not be part of that discussion, because it's a long-term thing that we're marching toward, and you need to be part of that. You know, I've got a BHAG for my company, and really I want to make sure that I am a difference in the lives of the people we work with. I want to really make sure that the time I invest matters, because we only have a limited number of hours. And so I want to be really intentional about that as we build and grow an organization. The core values are the unchangeables, okay? It's the things that we're not going to negotiate around, we're not going to give on, it's just the way it is. We all have them, and we just need to get them defined so we can share them with the people around us. HTS has got 5 of them: meaningful relationships, industry leadership, integrity, team, and lifelong learning. Those are the things we tell our employees that they need to focus on. They know if they stay within those boundaries, they're going to be okay. And I've got a set of personal core values that I've written that define how I want personally to make sure I live. So it takes some time to think through that, but it's really, really important. And it's important to communicate it with your family. You know, a lot of families have a set of core values, just kind of a blending of the parents and can, as your kids grow, become part of the things that you talk about. Mission really gets down to what's compelling, exciting, why is it we exist. Should be fairly short. A good mission statement fits on a t-shirt. Ours takes a 3X to get it on, but you want a short one that people can remember, because this is the why. There's a lot of business books written today that talk about the why, and you need to be able to answer the why, and you need to be able to answer it quickly. So we have a vision statement, a mission statement, core values that we talk to our team about, and they understand what it is we're trying to accomplish. The vision is a shorter look, so BHAG's 15, 20, 25 years. Vision's how we're going to do that over the next 3 to 5, maybe 10 years. And it's also a statement that you want to define and be able to communicate clearly. You know, we ask our folks to memorize these things. We walk around with $5 Subway cards, and if they can recite our core values or our mission or our vision, we'll give them a gift card, because it's important that it becomes part of how they think. It's what we want them to believe and to live by. And it's on our website. We communicate it to our customers and to the world at large. We want them to know this is how HTS is going to do business. Part of the reason for this is it allows us to do what has become very popular in terms of business consulting today, called the 20-mile march. Jim Collins wrote his last book, Great by Choice, and he talks about the fact that success in business or in life comes when we get up and we do the same thing, the same way, consistently every day. It's not figuring out some magic thing to go do. It's about being consistent. And he talks about the fact that businesses that don't succeed typically have a disease called chronic inconsistency. They don't do anything the same way multiple days in a row. They just get up and do whatever they do based on how they feel that day. And that doesn't lead to success. So the 20-mile march really is all about knowing what your BHAG is, your mission, your vision, your core values, getting up and living that way every day. It's why this is really a foundational part of the business plan, because it gives us the guidelines by which we're going to go ahead and live. I write a daily email 6 days a week, and I send it out to a whole bunch of people, but I don't really write it for the people. I write it for myself because I need this as part of my 20-mile march. It's how I start my day every day, and it helps me be disciplined, okay? Sometimes the stuff I write doesn't even make sense, but it's the habit, it's the discipline, it's the continual execution that enables me to start the day on the right foot and make sure that I'm marching down the same path. And if other people can benefit, you know, with email, I like to get up over 50,000 too. I got to keep up with Scott, you know. Actually, I send out about 900 a day, so it doesn't take me long to get to 50,000. But you know, we gotta have these habits in our lives if we're going to succeed. But they need to be based upon the things that matter to us. That's why the BHAG and mission, vision, and values are so important. That's the foundation that we build on. We can build our 20-mile march upon. The comment I get over and over is, how do you get up and write every day? 6 days a week. I haven't missed a day since 2008, okay? It happens. Whether I'm sick, whether I'm on the road, whether I'm whatever. Sometimes my wife gets frustrated that she's got to wait for me to send out the stupid email. But if I don't write it, I have to stop and do it, because it's how I have built this routine in my life. And so that is, you know, a critical part of what we do with these things. So the business plan has got those components, and then it gets more granular about what we're going to do right now. We put objectives in there. These are the things that we're going to try to accomplish. This is what the peer groups are going to start to hold them accountable for. They have to put strategy in there, how they're actually going to execute these things. And they are short term. Okay, the business plan's within a year, so we're not looking long term. We have that information in there, but when we get down to the tactical things, we're looking at a year, and that often gets broke down to a quarter. But this is what the groups are going to hold them accountable to. We used a couple of different options. An organization called Gazelles has got a one-page plan, or we use a one-page business plan format, and they've got these templates to fill out and use. So business plan is all about the business. Second plan that we talk about is a leadership plan. And that's how they're going to lead their organization. So it's all about them. They know what they're trying to accomplish for their organization. The leadership plan is designed for people in the organization that carry responsibility. You will have multiple leadership plans across the folks that are leading that are going to roll together and get to the business plan. So we're talking about where they're going to focus, what their job responsibilities are going to be, really what they're signing up for to lead an organization. A lot of guys own businesses today because they don't want to really have to answer to anybody else. They don't want a job. They want to be the boss. Because that way they don't have to, make commitments. And that's a kind of a deceiving feeling. It's not how you actually succeed. So the reason peer groups work is we kind of take that option away, the option of not performing and not actually doing anything, and we ask them to write a plan, to be accountable to it, and the group becomes their overseer and accountability partner. So they write down what they're going to execute. They have to be specific about what they're trying to accomplish. What specifically are they going to do to lead the company? What steps are they going to take? What actions are they going to follow? And then they have to talk about how they want to get measured. Because what gets measured gets done. So as they're talking to their group every quarter, they're reporting on how they're doing in terms of executing against their leadership plan. And if they are not hitting it, then the group can provide some direction and feedback. These are the kinds of areas we talk about in the leadership plan. Some financial kinds of things they're responsible to drive, how they want to grow personally, and what kind of training they want to participate in, what relationships and customer interaction they're going to be responsible for, what they're going to do about culture. Guys that own companies are responsible for the culture of that organization, and it's not accidental. So what are they going to do to drive the kind of culture they want? How are they going to improve their organization? And finally, what's their career look like? What's next, if there's going to be a next? So we ask them to think about those areas and to create what they're going to do, how they want to get measured, so that the group can help hold them accountable and keep them moving forward. So the leadership plan is it's a simple one-page doc where they make commitments, they talk about what they'll do and what the accountabilities are. The groups focus over here, ask the questions. Did you do what you said you were going to do? If not, why not? What can we do to help you get that done? And as they do that, then they move forward down the path they're trying to achieve. One process as part of this is the whole shift from being somebody that just works in the company to somebody that leads. A lot of folks that are running small businesses today didn't go to business school. They were really good at what they did. They hired some more people that were really good at what they do. And they got this little company of people that are really good doers, not so much leaders, because that's not what they spent their time learning. So we got to help transition them into a different mindset to become CEOs, company leaders that think differently. And that's part of what the leadership plan is designed to do, is to help them begin to make that transition from being a doer to a leader. Because there's a lot of differences, you know, and we define those clearly as we talk about what the focus point's going to be if you're going to be a CEO versus being somebody that works on the business day to day. So a lot of companies don't have anybody thinking like a CEO. And those companies typically are slow to grow, struggle to maintain staff, and have a whole other host of challenges they try to work through until they can make that transition. So third plan we talk about is the life plan. The life plan uses a similar format to the leadership plan, but this is the hours that we're not at work. And what I find in working with business owners is they're pretty willing to plan the business. They'll even plan how they're going to lead. When we get to this area, it's like, I don't know about this. This is getting kind of squishy, touchy-feely stuff. But the reality is everybody has 168 hours, okay? Bill Gates has 168 hours. Warren Buffett has 168 hours. Your spouse has 168 hours. Level playing field, everybody's got the same. Never going to get more, never going to get less. So it's what we do with those hours that matter. I used to think this balance thing was the goal. I've absolutely come to the conclusion there is no such thing as balance. There's going to be tension between work and life until we die. There's never enough time to do everything we want to do in all areas of life. So what we have to do is manage what we do with our hours to do the things that are most important to us. If we don't have a plan, the urgent stuff gets our attention. Whoever's screaming the loudest, wherever the biggest problem is, that's where we're going to go put our time. For a lot of small business owners, it's work. Because there's always problems. Customers are always needy. Employees always got issues. We'll never run out of stuff we can go do at work. And so this becomes really important when we begin to let a plan help us make decisions. And where we've made commitments on both sides of that tension line, and rather than just defaulting to work because there's always something to do there, we have to stop and say, whoa, my life plan says I'm going to do this. And that doesn't mean I can put all my time in the work bucket. So I've never had anybody tell me that work was more important than their family, work was more important than their kids, work was more important than a lot of other things that we would put in the life bucket. But when we look at how they use their time, it doesn't match up because they spend all their time in the work bucket. And so the life plan is really a way for us to try and balance this thing, to manage the tension, and really answer the question, why do I get up in the morning and do what I do? Why am I getting up? Is it just to go to have a job, go to work, or is it to live a life? And if it's to live a life, then I have to manage that time, because it'll escape if I don't. Jim Rohn says, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into somebody else's plan, and guess what they have planned for you? Not much. Nobody else is sitting around thinking, wow, I wonder what I can do with Robin's life plan. How can I help maximize her time? We don't do that for other people. We're the only one that's going to think about how we're going to manage our time that we've been given to live the life that we want to live. So I can't encourage you enough to be part of this process for sure. You may not want to get in the middle of a business plan or even a leadership plan. But I got to tell you, as a spouse, you are right smack in the middle of this thing. And some of the most powerful meetings that I've ever been able to facilitate have been planning meetings where the group was focused on life plans and they brought their spouses to the meeting. And lots of tears were shed. Lots of spouses said, I had no idea you thought about it that way. We've never talked about this stuff, and I've been married to you for 20 years. We don't talk about this stuff. We just assume that since we live in the same house, well, they get it. Let me assure you, your spouse don't get it. They don't have a clue what you think, what matters to you. So take the time to be part of this process because this is really important to everybody. And they don't realize how important it is to them until it's way too late. So don't let that happen. Never confuse having a career with having a life. A lot of business owners do. They're willing to sacrifice life for their career. And then one day they wake up way too late and say, wow, what a mistake. You know, I've had the opportunity to visit with a number of folks that were ready to pass on from this life. Never had one of them say, man, I wish I would have spent more time at the office. I wish I would have worked a little harder so we could have made, a few more points to the bottom line. I sure wish I would have done a lot more stuff at work. I don't ever hear that. I've never had one person say that to me. But I've had a lot of people say, wow, I wish I'd have spent more time with my spouse or my kids or my parents or people that were important to me. I don't get to do that now. We only get one chance going through life. We don't get any do-overs. So this is really one of the most important things that we talk about in HTG. And it needs to be shared goals. Okay? Life plan doesn't just impact your spouse, it impacts you and your family and the people around you. And it needs to be shared goals. It needs to be stuff that you talk about together. And it's hard the first time because it's not something that they teach you to do in marriage class. This is foreign stuff, especially to business owners. But you need to spend the time, have the conversation, and have it be a continual thing. Because the life plan's got to be updated too. You're going to eventually start to grow old. I know none of you have gotten to that point yet, but you will start to get older. You got to make decisions. We've just gone through or going through the aging parent thing. That totally changes the world for us, where we move from being parented to becoming the parents of our parents and being responsible, and it totally disrupts the way we knew life for the last 30 years together. So it's going to change. You need to have the conversations. And we also include a part of it as a bucket list. What are some things you want to do someday together? It's not necessarily the BHAG concept as much as here's some things that would be kind of fun to do together if we can put it on a list and start to work toward it. So the life plan is a 12-month kind of thing. What are we going to do for the next 12 months? We're not going to try to figure life out for 25 years. What are we going to do this year? What are the actions we're going to take? What matters? And to succeed, we often have to create habits. Okay? We have to create some habits. Accountability-wise, what are we going to be measured on? How do we want to measure the way we're doing life? Now, we use in our groups, and I'm sure some of you have filled out what we call the spouse rating form, which is really an attempt we make to get feedback from spouses on how people are doing in executing at home in life. It's fun to listen to those guys try to defend their scores. You know, I got to tell you, they can make up some very creative excuses. You know, usually you're having a bad day somehow, but the group knows that's not the case. But we're trying to help keep focus on things that matter. And so accountability of this is part of it. And we look across these kind of areas in the life plan. You know, what do you want to do around relationships? That includes you as spouses, the family. What do you want to do around health and fitness? Okay? Because that's an important part of life. How about money and finance on the personal side? Recreational lifestyle. What about your spiritual life? How do you want to serve your community and contribute? What are you going to do to help make sure there's happiness in your world? And what about retirement? So those are the categories that we include in the life plan that we ask people to focus on and to create some commitments they're going to work toward in each of those, some measurements they want to have held accountable to, and then how are we going to hold them accountable? What are the specific questions they want us to ask to make sure they're accomplishing what they set out to do? So it's a simple 3-column thing where you put commitments, what you're going to execute, how you want to be held accountable. And you know, this is the kind of form that we provide as a template. And I would just encourage you to, it's in Q3 when they have to have these ready to talk about in their group, be part of the process. You know they're going to have to do it in the first couple of weeks of August is when they're going to be going over these puppies. So, you know, this summer, start asking the question. Have you started to work on your life plan update? You know, let's talk about this stuff. I want to be part of it because it impacts you. And if we can get this right, if we can get this cycle of planning right and you're part of the process, it will help determine how the time gets used. We have a form we use for people to review. Okay, this is another area where I would encourage you to ask to be part of. Because we ask them, what are the top 3 things you've accomplished? What are the top 3 things you didn't get done? And so this helps people stay on track, make sure they're spending their time in the right way. And then we have the bucket list form. It's a place to list the things you'd like to do, and as you get them done, you can check them off. It's just a way to organize how you want to try to do life. So, business plan, leadership plan, life plan, legacy plan's the 4th one. And we talk about it in 2 spheres, a business legacy and a personal legacy. And the key question that we want them to think about is, what are you going to do with your life that will last forever? What is it that you're going to invest your time into that's going to last forever? And it gets expressed in lots of different ways. You know, there are folks that will develop a trust, some kind of charitable education fund. I mean, it's amazing what people come up with as how they want legacy to be expressed. But most people don't ever stop and think about this until they're facing death, because nobody wants to really think about the fact that they're going to die. There aren't a lot of things I can be real sure about. This is one of them. You are going to die. There is going to be a legacy. And the question is, do you want to control what it looks like, or do you want to let somebody else do it for you? Because here's the facts. There are records, which are the details of your life. There's history, which is the story of your life. And there's the legacy, which is the impact of your life over time. Someday, somebody sitting in some office is going to push a button and delete your record. okay? It'll just be gone. The story of your life will get rewritten, retold, changed based on who's telling it. Legacy is the one thing we can do about the future, where if we plan ahead and we create a way to pass it on, we can control forever. But it doesn't happen unless we are intentional and spend the time to work through it. And it's not easy stuff, because we don't like to think about this. The personal legacy plan has got a bunch of different components to it. Starts with having a personal mission statement about what we're trying to accomplish with our life, or why we want to live the way we do, what our legacy is going to be. We have a little form called If Something Happens to Me. This is where we want people to put all the important information that you might need to know in the event something did happen. So passwords, bank account information, insurance information, property information, all the things that you need to know to actually be able to work through an estate. We've had a couple of deaths of HTG members in the last few years. And I can tell you that one of the widows went through an experience without having any of that information. And I still vividly recall the morning, on Monday morning, he passed away on a Saturday. I got a call on Monday morning saying, payroll's due today. I don't have access to the checking account. He was the only one that was authorized as a signer. The bank won't let us have access to the money. How am I going to make payroll? I've got 18 employees that I can't pay. She wasn't involved in the business, so she really didn't have a clue what was going on. But there hadn't really been great preparation. And the reality of this is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to anybody, is to spend the time to gather the information that's going to be necessary. My dad just passed away this past summer, and he had done an excellent job of collecting and recording and making available the information we would need to settle his estate. It hasn't really been a challenge even. It was all written down, it was all in a file drawer. He actually had given it to me to keep in my own office, so I didn't even have to go look for it. That can make it such a smooth thing, so when you're going through the grieving process, you're not worried about where am I going to go find this and that, and how am I going to do that? Where am I going to try to figure out this password to our bank account that I don't know what it is? You know, there's so many pieces of information that we need to know. It's so much easier for somebody to just take the time to write it down, so we've got it. So that's part of what we have provided to your spouse. We have a funeral planning guide template. That's another thing that I've found to be really helpful in cases where somebody passes away. To have picked out or already prepared a lot of things that the family doesn't have to sit down and work through and try to figure out, well, now what did she like? What would she want us to do here? And you got 3 or 4 siblings, and they all got different ideas, and it turns into not a very happy time. So instead of grieving, people are focused on trying to figure stuff out. And we also have some guidance around estates and wills and the kinds of things we need legally to be prepared. So that's all part of the legacy plan. We know that this is a really challenging thing. So we don't expect people to get this all done like in a few weeks or even a few years. This is a process. I do know if you never start, you never complete it. So every year we try to push people to the next step, to the point where at some point in the near future, they've got all these pieces worked through. Now they got to update them, okay? My habit is every quarter I go through and I update the spreadsheet of all the information to make sure it's current, because You have to change passwords and other things, and if you don't update it, then it becomes quickly unusable. So you got to get in that routine, but we're providing all those tools. So legacy really defines how you're going to live. Covey says you begin with the end in mind. That's what a legacy plan is all about. Knowing what you're trying to accomplish, knowing how you're going to get there, so you've got a roadmap to follow. So, you know, I've got a legacy plan written out, and I've shared that with my family. I chose to do it in kind of a letter form. There's lots of ways to do it. Collecting all that information and making sure it's available. You don't want things to slip through the cracks. It's amazing when I talk to attorneys that work with estates how much time they have to spend trying to track down assets. People know that there's money in banks or there's stocks here or stocks there, but they don't exactly know all the details. And families spend lots of money paying lawyers to try to figure out stuff, where you can prepare all that ahead of time and have it available so that that's not the case. So this is the kind of form that we've got in there. The exit planning guide has got places to just fill in the blanks, basically. And the same thing with the will and estate stuff. It's a form you can use. You can fill it out, then take it to an attorney, and you've got all the information they'll need to actually help you. So we've got a little worksheet template that is part of our legacy plan and leads you through that process. The business thing is very similar because we need to do the same kinds of things around business. Business needs a mission statement. It needs a legacy statement. What are we trying to accomplish through our business? What do we want the outcome to be over time? Businesses probably have more pieces of information that you need to know than you do in a personal setting. And I can tell you in many cases, it's not organized. We experience that when we do disaster relief. We go in to try to help, and it's like, well, I know we've got that somewhere, but you know, our building's no longer here. That's what we experienced in Joplin when we went down to help one of our members in Joplin after the tornado. His building was gone. All of his information was gone. And it's a problem to try to recreate stuff that you assume is going to be there tomorrow. So we encourage every company to have a disaster recovery plan. Across the hall, we've got a session going on today with about 20 companies focused on creating a disaster recovery plan, which is, Rich is over there going crazy right now. The monkey will be coming over here after a while. You know, the disaster recovery plan is something's gone really, really bad. What are we going to do to recover? So it's a notebook of information that needs to be collected, processes that need to be developed. It's a big project. And Mike Simmel is helping train up 20 of our members across the hall this time. We hold that every session we have like this. We also want to have a business continuity plan, which is a little bit different. Disaster recovery is about the big problem coming and wiping our business out. Business continuity is about what if we lose a key employee? What if an owner passes away? What if there's a divorce that disrupts business? It's about business disruption. And so there's a continuity plan for if X happens, this is what we're going to do to be able to deal with that. And it's thinking through all the different scenarios of issues. I mean, we've experienced through HTG cases where there's been long-term illnesses and people are out of the business for months. Or maybe it's their spouse that's out of the business for months, or a spouse passes away. There's a number of disruptions that can happen that can really rock a business. And if you haven't thought through those scenarios before, you really don't know exactly what to do when it happens. the key to all planning is to have a response that you can just make because you've already thought about it. And Mike will be the first to tell you that successful disaster response is knowing what to do when you can't think clearly because you've already got the plan. You know, it's no different than practicing the fire drill at home and, you know, if there's a fire, this is what we do. Same kind of concept. Think through the different disruptions that can happen and have a continuity plan in place. So those are the 4 plans, really 5 plans that we really focus on with HTG. They're all designed to help us with this holistic approach around legacy, life, leadership, and business. And you know, my encouragement to you is be part of the process. This stuff will impact you, and it's really important that since that's what we're going to be driving them to execute against, your opportunity to be part of receiving that execution is to be part of the planning process. Okay? Any questions? Does that make sense? Now, they'll still complain about having to do it, okay? Because it's a lot of work. And they're going to really be surprised if you ask to be part of it. So I hope you do, because it is an opportunity to really help shape the future of your life, your legacy, and what they go spend their time doing every day. With that, I'm going to say